Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tanya and You, Chapter 19. We are up to, we didn't, this is chapter number 19, and it's already the second chapter into part two of Tanya and You, which we began last week with chapter 18. Before I begin, I hope everyone's doing well, and I wanted to point out the Tanya that I'm using today, this Tanya right over here, was actually printed here in Metairie, Louisiana. I'm not sure if you can read it in Hebrew, but it has the words Metairie, Louisiana in Hebrew. Interestingly, um, in the 1980s, I think it was in summer of 84, 85, the Rebbe came out with this almost like a campaign encouraging people to print the Tanya in every city around the world, across the globe. Every city that there is a handful of Jews, we should print the Tanya in that city, and we should insert the name of the city in the title page right at the beginning of it should say this was printed in this city, so when people see that they say, "Wow, let me read it. A book printed in my city. Let me see what it's about." So right in front of me, I actually have numerous prints of the Tanya. This Tanya was printed in New Orleans. This Tanya was printed in Shreveport, Louisiana. We got this Tanya over here that was printed in Monroe, Louisiana, all the way north. This was, like we mentioned, in Metairie that we made a printing. So I'm sure you have printings of Tanya in every city, in Philly and wherever we are. You can try to find a Tanya that was printed in your city. It's obviously so much more precious and exciting. In fact, when they started the war now a number of months ago in Gaza, they actually did numerous printings of the Tanya in the various cities in Gaza. And no matter what we're doing, we're fighting and literally risking our lives for the protection of Israel and the Jewish people. But when we have a few spare moments, what do? We can sit down and study some Tanya. And that's what the soldiers have been doing. Okay, chapter 19. Chapter 19, another powerful chapter in the Tanya. Like every chapter, unique, special. It's a little long, a little longer, I should say, than the other chapters, but a very powerful idea, which we as a continuation to last week's chapter where we spoke about the hidden love. We speak about why is this love hidden? Okay, so where are we at? Right, you're driving down the interstate. You stop at a rest area. You look at the map. You are here, right? We have to know where are we in the Tanya, right? There's so much that we've spoken about. So, in short, the first 17 chapters of the Tanya spoke about the art of building a relationship with God, with Hashem, and we spoke about the importance of having an emotional relationship, an emotional connection with Hashem, because when there's no emotional relationship, when it's a dry act, like we spoke about the Beinoni who has this relationship is in full control over their thoughts, their speech, and their actions. But if it's not driven by a motivation, an emotional motivation, it's difficult. It's difficult to hold on to that type of motivation, that control, self control, self mastery. So it's important to have an emotional relationship. And up until chapter 18, we spoke about how to develop this emotion, this love, this excitement, this passion for Hashem, how to nurture it. We use the analogy of climbing the mountain. Not the analogy of the Tanya, but the idea that how to climb the mountain, right? What do we have to do? What type of gear do we need? What type of training do we need? And it isn't always easy, but it could be done. It could be done. We spoke about some of the thought process, how we have to have daily inspiration, and how this daily inspiration brings about some type of an emotional, at least an emotional appreciation for God. And ultimately, we develop some type of emotion, some type of excitement, some type of love for Hashem. That was up until chapter 18. Last week in 18, we started speaking about perhaps an easier route where you don't have to develop something new, create something that isn't already there. We don't have to climb the mountain because what we said was we were born on top of the mountain. We have it already. We possess this love. We have this emotion that we're looking for. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have it already. We are born with it. As an inheritance from our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we are born with this innate love for God. We call it the emunah, the faith, the natural faith that we have, that we don't have to be a theologian, we don't have to be a professor, we don't have to study and understand the greatness of God. We have it with us. Why do we believe? Why do we love God? Just because. It's part of our nature. It's part of our genetics. It's part of our DNA. We are born with it. It's the makeup. It's the spiritual makeup of the Jewish soul. We aren't only physical human beings. We have the spiritual element that is part of us, this spark. And therefore, the Tanya says that even people who not necessarily are living a life of Judaism, they may even be heretics. But when push comes to shove, when they're pushed to the wall, and it's their religion, their God, or their life, many times they'll be willing to give up their life for the God that they thought they don't believe in. Because it's not a matter of conscious belief, it's the subconscious reality of a Jewish person. That was chapter 18. In chapter 19, we continue where we left off. And chapter 19 discusses the idea of why is it hidden? Why is it hidden? Why am I not feeling every single day that excitement, that passion, that love for God that seemingly I have already? Why for some people is it only revealed in these difficult moments? That's what chapter 19 is here to address. And to better understand this idea, because every love that we have to know what exactly is this love? What is this drive? Right? If I love pizza, if I love ice cream, I know what it is. I like the feeling that this cold, sweet food feels when it touches my tongue. That's what I want. I enjoy it. I want to have it. I know what the love is. What exactly is this love for God? How is it expressed? How is it manifest? What is the subject? What exactly do I want? So the Tanya opens up chapter 19 with a verse from Proverbs. Ner Hashem nishmas adam. The soul of mankind is compared to the candle, to the fire of God. So we refer to our neshama, this innate love that we have. We use the analogy of a fire. Now, today I brought some props to the class. Okay, we have a candle, we have a fire, and we're going to light the candle. And we're going to take a moment to observe what happens, besides that my screen gets blurry, what else happens when you light a candle? Oh, Lynn, right? It goes up. Flames are always going up, no matter what direction I am holding my candle. I can put it upside down, and the flame always goes up. Another observation. It doesn't sit still. The flame is restless. It's always jumping. It's always flickering. It's unsettled. Right? Look at what's things behind me. Yeah, we have, what is it? A keyboard, a computer keyboard. We have some papers, right? It's been there yesterday. It hasn't moved. No one's touching it. It's very happy where it is. It's settled. This flame can't sit still for a moment. Does it have ADD? What's going on over here? Sit still for a second. Jumping up and jumping up, jumping up. right? Flickering back and forth. What's going on over here? That's the flame. That's the fire. And that's the analogy that we use here in the Tanya. Now I got to figure out how to extinguish this flame without making a fire over here. Okay. Oh. Ah. Flame extinguished successfully. Okay. So the Tanya uses this analogy, it explains why the King Solomon in Proverbs, why do we use the analogy of a flame, a fire, to use the analogy for a neshama? He says, just like this flame, why is it flickering? And why is it always going upwards? There's a spiritual element to a fire. In general, fire is not something so physical like everything else, right? It's heat, it's gas, but it's not like any other physical item that you could touch, you could feel. There's this little bit of a spiritual element to a flame, a little more refined, and it's in tune. The flame, the fire, is in tune with its source, its spiritual source up above. And the Tanya says the reason why it's flickering, the reason why it's unsettled, the reason why it's always going up, because truthfully, what the flame really wants is to go up and return to its spiritual source, its root, its origin, up above in the spiritual worlds. It's fighting to leave the flame, the fire, the candle, to leave the wick, and to detach itself from the physical wick that's holding it down, and to go up to its spiritual source. Now, if I was able to have a conversation with a flame, you know what I will tell it? I said, flame, you're such a fool. Because if you leave the wick, you want to go up to your source, you know what's going to happen? You're going to be extinguished. You're not going to exist anymore. You're going to be not. So you want to go back to your source, but meanwhile, when you go back to your source, you're basically shooting yourself in the leg, because then you're not going to be anymore. Your whole existence is only when you're down here attached to this physical wick. That is what I would tell the flame. And in fact, let me tell you something. I spoke to the flame, and the flame responded. You know what the flame told me? It says, Mendel, you're a fool. Why are you a fool? Because you are so physical, and you're so egotistic, and you're so selfish that you can't think outside of the box. You can't think about anything greater than self. The flame says, I am not your ordinary existence. Every other existence, when they want something, ultimately, what do they want? They want self. They want things that make me feel good. I enjoy coffee. Why do I want coffee? Not because I care for the coffee, because I care how the coffee makes me feel. It makes me feel good. Everything that I want is ultimately for self. We're thinking about self. Tell you the truth, even sometimes when you do something good to another person, because it feels good to do good. Ultimately, it's all about self. And the fire is that one thing that says, I don't care about self. I want to return to my source, even if it means that I cease to exist. Because my want, my drive is not about self. It's about the idea, the purpose. The flame fire is the one thing we were able to find that is truly altruistic, not thinking about self. And that, the Alter Rebbe says, is why we use the analogy of a fire for the neshama, for our soul, for our spiritual, the godly soul. because that's exactly what it wants to do. That's the ahava, that's the love, the relationship that it has with God, just like the flame. Everything else, any other love that we have, is really a love, a self-love. We want things that make us feel good, that we feel appreciated, that we feel non-guilty, or has a physical pleasure to it, or an emotional pleasure to it. Whatever it is, right? Ultimately, it's self. But this neshama says, I don't care about self. I want God. I want to connect with God. I want to have this relationship with God. And if it means that I will cease to exist, so be it. Because it's not about me, it's about God. That's the drive of the neshama. So if we ask, what is this? How does this love look? What is this love? This is the one love that we have, not for self. It's love for God, and not because it feels good to have a relationship with God. It's because this is just it. This is its nature. It wants to have a relationship with God, even if it means not self. It's not about feeling it; it's about having it. That's the nature of this love, and that's why we use the analogy of a flame fire, and that's why it's restless. It's restless. It can't sit still. All it wants to do is to connect with God, and there's no explanation to it. This is just how the Jewish soul functions. And maybe that's why some Jewish people are always restless. We're never happy with status quo. All of the isms are always come about through Jewish people, because we always try to make change. We always try to do something, right? We can't sit. We're like this fire. But ultimately, it's not about self. It's this passion, this excitement is really about the idea, about God. And that really is the difference, that Tanya says, between holiness and the opposite of holiness. Kedusha and Klippa. Klippa is the negative forces. Negativity ultimately is really about self. And when we're living life all about self, about our own ego, it's almost living in isolation. There lacks this interconnectivity with others. Because ultimately, the others in my life are really to serve me. That is what we call Kalipa. But the truth is, that's the way most of us function. We function because we are born naturally selfish people, right? We start off with the animal soul, dominant. Look at children. Look at children in school. Look at children at home. Everything is about self. Don't dare touch my toy. It's my toy. And I can't share with others. Children are not naturally sharing their stuff. They have to learn how to share. But naturally, it's about self, right? You ever see that conversation, that meme where the two babies are like, hey, it's 3 a.m. now. I think now's a good time to start crying and get mommy to wake up and to feed us, right? Just when she falls asleep, that's a good time to start crying, right? Babies cry in the middle of the night. What do they want? Feed me. Feed me. It's me. I don't care about others. You know what? When's the last time a baby said, you know what? I see mom is really tired. You know what? Let me wait an extra hour. I'll start crying in an hour for food. No, I want it, then I want it now. Why? Because I care about self. That's the nature of human beings. And with it, it's an extreme by children, but the same as with adults, right? Ultimately, it's about self. We're thinking about, okay, we have manners, we're being polite, we're thinking about others, but ultimately it's about self. That is the animal soul. Not bad necessarily. It's just self. It's egotistic. It's egocentric. The godly soul is thinking about the greater picture. It's the idea to open up a little bit, to connect with others, to connect with God, to think about the bigger picture. What am I needed for? Right? It's not about self, even if it means that the self will be diminished. The self will cease to exist. So naturally, when we are born, we have this the animal soul. The klipa has precedence, and that is really kind of what controls us and what we live by. And here the Tanya says this is the reason why this ahava, this love, that we are born with is a hidden love. It's hidden behind the animal soul. It's hidden behind the klippa because we are born naturally to think about self. And this little spark, this godly soul, this altruistic self that we have within us naturally, the hidden love is hidden. It's buried. And we have to work on revealing it, on tapping into it. And how do we tap into it? It can be in a moment's notice. It's like looking at a volcano. Oh, it's settled. It's inactive. But in a second, suddenly, it's an active volcano. It's overflowing. Same is true with our godly soul. We're born, I wouldn't say inactive, but it's not the front burner, it's the back burner. It's a hidden love. It's a hidden, and so much so, sometimes we're unaware that we even own it. It's that hidden. It's that covered up. But the Tanya says, you have it. It's part of your DNA. So up until chapter 18, we said, well, you don't feel love? Develop a new love. Contemplate on God's greatness. Develop an emotional relationship with God. Chapter 18 and 19 say, wait. But you don't necessarily have to develop a new love. Truthfully, you have it already. Just open up. Take a shovel and start digging. You'll find it. You have that love within you. And sometimes others find it for you. And unfortunately, sometimes is when we're pushed to the corner. And the question is, your religion, your God, or your life. And that's why the Tanya says, some people who were unaware of this love, they were unaware of this relationship with God. And sometimes consciously, they were denying that they have this relationship with God. They were heretics. They were atheists. They're people who were completely secular, living secular lives. But when they're put to the task, they're put to the test and say, listen, are you willing to give up on your God? Many times people say, you know what? I was born a Jew, I will die a Jew. That is that moment when the volcano erupts. That is the moment when that inner love that you always had in the subconscious mind suddenly comes to the forefront. Now I'm willing to think not about self, but about God. Like that flame that wants to detach itself. Suddenly this drive that we have naturally comes to the open, is opened up, is revealed. So this is what Tanya 19 argues. He says, we all have it. It's hidden because we are born with this sense of self. And that sense of self covers up this natural love that we have, this natural relationship that we have with God. But either we could work on revealing it, and sometimes it's revealed at a moment's notice because it's always there. I want to conclude with a story. A story that I might have told in the past. I don't remember right now. But the story goes as follows. In the town of Spola. Spola is a town in I think in Poland, somewhere in Europe. I think it was Poland. In the town of Spola, there's a Jewish cemetery. And in the Jewish cemetery, you have a very interesting tombstone. And the tombstone says as follows. It says, here is buried Yosef, the holy thief. Okay? Yosef, the holy thief. What does that mean? Right? A holy thief. If you're holy, a thief. If you're a thief, you're not holy. I mean, what's going on over here? So there's a story behind it. And the story is that there's this man named Joseph, a Jew, Yosef the Jew. But he was a town's thief. Every town had to have a thief. He was a town's thief. And he was pretty good. He was pretty good at his occupation. was able to break into people's homes. He knew when people are traveling. He knew when people are away. He knew where people kept their valuables, and he was a thief. Unfortunately, that was his way of making a living. Well, one day he made this big mistake, and he breaks into the home of the priest, and he's caught. This time he's caught, and he's put into prison. And the priest comes to him and says, "Listen, you're caught. You're the thief. You're the wanted thief. I'll give you a choice. Over here, we take thievery very serious. Capital punishment. We're going to kill you. We're going to hang you in the town square. But there's one way out. If you convert out of the Judaism, we'll give you another chance." Thinking that a thief obviously isn't someone who's really practicing Judaism, of course he'll go with it, and it'll be a win-win for the priest. Joseph says, "No, I can't do it. Can't do it." And the priest says, "Okay, I'll give you a few days. You remain in this cell. Call me when you're ready." A few days go by. The priest comes for another visit. "New, Joseph, have you thought about it?" And he says, "Yes, I have thought about it." And the answer is no. Long story short, he ended up losing his life because he wasn't willing to give up on his Judaism. When the Jewish community got Joseph to bury, they didn't know what to do. He was a thief. He was a town's thief. What do we do with such a person? But look how he lost his life. Look how he ended his life as a proud Jew. And that is why they wrote on his tombstone, "Here lies Joseph, the holy thief." Not to emphasize how he was a thief, but to bring out that although he was a thief, he was holy. He was holy. He was willing. At that moment, that little spark, that hidden love, as the Tanya refers to it, came to the surface, revealed itself, and he was literally willing, like the flame, to give up its existence, to give up its life for God, because this is not a rationale. It's not something we could explain and give a lecture on. This is just the nature of this love, the nature of this neshama. And that is chapter 19. The gist of chapter 19. As always, I highly recommend that you read it inside and to get all this detail. I'll leave you with that. Have a good week. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
And hope to see you next week as we continue with chapter 20.
There's a